standing here, I can almost hear the sound of leather against willow. I'm a few months too early for that quintessential sound associated with an English summer. That and torrential rain, of course. I'm at Newstead Abbey. This is the cricket pavilion at Newstead Abbey. Cricket pitch is over there. And it does have an important invertebrate significance, this site, because this is one of two known sites for the oil beetle, Meloe proscarabeus, in Nottinghamshire. The trouble with this place is heavily trodden by members of the public, and we've had no reports of the black oil beetle being here for several years now. A number of years ago, when they were first discovered, Dillis and I made a couple of visits to this site, and indeed we did eventually find the oil beetle here, not only on the cricket pitch but also in the adjacent car park just up the hill there. The big problem was all but two were dead and had been trampled on underfoot. And the biggest number of beetles that we found were on the cricket square and the surrounding outfield. But a couple of live ones were further up there, right at the top of the car park. But say there's been no report since of this magnificent beetle. So I may well have to turn up here again sometime in March. Newstead Abbey is a really beautiful asset to Nottinghamshire. Obviously you've got the links with Newstead Abbey and the poet Byron, but the grounds are truly beautiful, beautifully landscaped. It's just a joy to come here, and on a early January day like today, it is dull and gloomy, but there's a hint of brightness in the sky. There's not very many people here. My kind of day, really. In terms of invertebrate recording, Newstead has been largely neglected. I'll say Dillis and I paid a couple of visits here and did do a bit of surveying around one small pond further past the gardens. But there are huge examples of trees such as this magnificent sweet chestnut. But the range of trees here is particularly great. There's some really good old over mature beech trees in various states of being alive and in decay. There should be plenty here to entertain the coleopterist. It's just that nobody dares to come. I've barely come more than 100 yards from the car park, which is still only there. The cricket pitch is just behind me there. But trees like these ivy covered sycamores and other trees are ideal places to hunt for inverts at this time of year. Ivy is home and a host to innumerable species of inverts during the winter months. But I suppose Newstead Abbey's lack of invertebrate recording is probably down to the fee to get in. I seem to think it's about £6, and they don't take cash, card only. Progress, I suppose. But from just here where I am now, I'm going to work my way that way down towards the house and the immediate grounds. Hopefully we may be able to turn something up on the sandstone brickwork and stone walls of the abbey itself. It's a beautiful building, and it started to rain. There's a wide range of habitats here, and I'm surprised, to be honest, with this large lake that it's not often frequented more by bird watchers. There must have been a few good things turned up here over the years, but never got recorded because no one come and looked. This large lake is well vegetated around its most part. Off to the left is the dam where the water is allowed to cascade down through into some rather nice ornamental gardens. Obviously, this being January, they're not going to be at the best. But this yew hedge on the right here, I love the way it's been cut. Reminds me of myself, really. Lots of bumps in all the wrong places. And here's the magnificent Newstead Abbey itself. It must have been impressive in its heyday, but it still is a beautiful building. And there's a great number of places in the garden and around the abbey that you can visit. There's a Japanese garden, Venetia's garden, even an American garden. There's a rose garden and a subtropical garden, though I can't see there being much in that this time of year. But then you've got a French garden and a Spanish garden. There's so much to look for here, and it is still run by Nottingham City Council. I remember many years ago when I was an apprentice gardener for the Nottingham City Council Recreation Department. We came here for half day's training pruning wall shrubs, and me and my friend at the time got left behind when the lorry came to pick us all up. We did, however, have a nice leisurely stroll, a mile to Ravenshead, and then caught the bus back to Nottingham. We still got paid, so all was good. The stonework is just stunning. Parts of it is weathered, with it being sandstone being an incredibly soft stone and prone to weathering. And bear in mind that this is the western side, so these walls take the brunt of the British weather, or the more inclement part of the British weather. And stone walls being stone walls, and you know by now I have a penchant for stone walls, because they have things on them, or potentially they can have things on them. There could be bristly millipede, which is one species that I've been looking for on here, which we recently saw at Woodbury Church. This is a place I ought to come really and have a quick check for the Harvestman Liburnum species A, although Newstead is quite cut off from the outside and industrious part of Nottinghamshire, so that Harvestman may not have been brought here. But we'll have a look, we'll see what turns up. This is the southern side of Newstead Abbey. You see some of the gardens, or the walled garden, is straight in front. This stands particularly nice because on the right here it overlooks another smaller and more enclosed and vegetated lake. like that. The range of trees here, with it being an ornamental park, is enormous, and there are trees from all around the world. You may well be able to make out the tree where a couple's just walking just left of centre of the shot. In fact, they're walking in front of it now, and that is the Evergreen Oak. I'm hoping that some parts of that tree are reachable from the ground. From here, I don't think they are, but we'll have a look anyway when we get to it. As you'll know by now, I do love me a good moss, and these beautiful cushion type mosses are absolutely gorgeous. And that's a little psyllid by the looks of it. But I just love mosses. They're almost like miniature gardens, almost miniature forests in their own way. Beautiful. Well, under a stone at the base of the southern wall of Newstead Abbey is this Cryptops type centipede. Almost certainly it'll be just Cryptops hortensis, which is the commonest of the two species of Cryptops known from Nottinghamshire. The other one is Cryptops anomalans, which is much bigger than this. But there is a third species, and if I remember right, it's Cryptops parisiae, which is unknown from Nottinghamshire. So it's worth just taking this home with us and having a further look. It involves looking at the longest pair of legs at the end of the body, those being on the left. You never know. For a Cryptops, it has a strange coloration, this one. So further investigation without killing it is required. Well, this is known as the Monk's Stew Pond. I don't know why. I'm presuming it was just one of the ponds where they kept fish when this was a proper abbey. Doesn't look particularly deep, but I imagine there's rather a lot of old leaves that's dropped in that over the years, so it might be deeper than what you imagine. And the tall tree at the end there is the Evergreen Oak that I'm after. I think I need a ladder. Well, that's looking back along the southern side and a bit of the eastern side here. This looks to be someone's residence, but the brickwork overall is proving to be quite quiet, despite a bit of lifting of loose mortar. I've yet to find anything lurking underneath. I did find a mottled umber that was resting against one of the exterior lights on the wall, but unfortunately it was about 12 feet off the ground and I couldn't film it. But my next port of call is just off to my right, and it's the walled garden, which used to be impressively bedded out with an assortment of bedding plants in spring and summer. But the last time Dillis and I came, it was far from anything like that, and was quite disappointing. You would think, with this being such a big tourist spot in the county, that they would go to town on the bedding schemes and planting schemes. But we'll have a look. They might have tarted it up since I last turned up. And this is the eastern end of the abbey. Beautifully built, and this is obviously newer than the original abbey itself. And the gardens, these used to be lovely flower beds, but they're now just given over to an assortment of rhododendrons, which really, it's disappointing to me. Should be making more of this place. I mean, this is where all your American tourists and other tourists from around the world come to see. The Americans especially love Byron. So you'd think this place would be pristine and they'd spend a bit of money on it. But typical of a council, even when I worked for them, they were always penny pinching and pound foolish. Behind me is the Spanish garden at Newstead, with its well maintained, beautifully cut box hedges. Looks quite nice. I'll have a look in a minute because I think I can see some signs of infestation by box tree moth, which if that is here, and it should be because it was first found only down the road at Bestwood, and it's been found in Ravenshead itself, so this might not be here for many more years. The disappointing aspect of it is I can't see where Kaluna heather comes into Spanish gardening. There's a lot of work required to maintain a Spanish garden like this, or any knot garden where you've got hedges of box. I can't see any visible signs or direct signs of box tree moth infestation, but it'll almost certainly be here, and it'll be something to look for when I come back later in the summer. There'll be a few more people here for a start as well. But for the effort required to maintain this, I can't understand why Nottingham City Council don't go to town a bit more on the beds themselves. It completely lets itself down, and that's quite indicative of much of the outer gardens here at Newstead. Despite the rather poor upkeep of the grounds here at Newstead Abbey, they could be a lot better, there's no denying that. But one of the most impressive things about a visit here is this. This is Byron's poem to his faithful companion, his dog Boatswain, who was died and buried here in 1808. And I'll leave the camera running, but have a read. It is the most remarkable piece of writing. And when I first read it a number of years ago, it was writing that I found particularly profound, and I remember at the time almost reduced me to tears. It's a beautiful piece of work, and it was indicative of Byron's style of writing and the work that he produced, that he really was as great a writer and poet as they always claim. So hopefully you've had the time to read it and you've took the time to read it, and I would recommend that you give it a second or even a third read. It really is beautifully written. I can't speak highly enough of it, and it's nice that it stands against such a background.